Dan Malott. We are at 20,000 feet right now, going from Destin, Florida, up to St. Louis, and then all the way to Grand Forks, which is home for us. And thought I'd share with you just a little bit about why business aviation. And so, if you've ever wondered, maybe maybe you own your own business, or you're an executive for a business, or you've been thinking about it, but one of the big questions is always like that why business aviation, especially if you look at like the cost of apples to apples private aviation versus the airlines. People always wonder, they're like, well, my gosh, it's so much more expensive. So in this video, I'm just going to share a few things about why business aviation makes so much sense. And in a nutshell, I'll go through each one of these individually, but first of all, increased productivity, increased revenue generation, depreciation availability, and a massive increase in the quality of life. So first thing, as I kind of mentioned, you really can't compare apples to apples, because as I'm going to kind of share with you, when you use business aviation or private aviation, there's a lot of other things. Now, I also, obviously, I fly for the airlines, and the airlines do great work. They fulfill certain missions that, for a business, let's say you got to send one of your salespeople over to a convention in Europe. Well, it may not make sense to fly them over in a private jet all the way to Europe if it's one person. So you really have to kind of compare the mission, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So let's talk about increased productivity. So there's a couple of really important things when it comes to increased productivity. The first thing is the increased time value of an employee. So, for example, if you actually put dollars and cents to the hours that your employees, executives, or business owners are earning from the company's behalf, especially if you have, like, let's say, a vice president, an engineer, and a salesperson, if you actually add up, like, the dollars per hour that those people are earning, and you think about the time that it takes to go from, like let's say a place like where we live in Grand Forks down to Des Moines, Iowa. Really the only way for them to get there is to go to Minneapolis and then go change planes and then go to Des Moines. They're going to have to check in, park, get there an hour early, go through security, do that whole thing, then go to Minneapolis, wait, plane change, maybe 2 hours in Minneapolis, then go to Des Moines, then, find a rental car. And so that whole trip, if you actually calculate the hours that employee is going on that trip through Minneapolis down to Des Moines, versus, if it's 3 people and you put them on like a twin-engine airplane like this, or even a Cirrus, a single-engine airplane, or a King Air, a light turboprop, if you actually add up how many hours they could save and their hourly rate, it's substantial how much money in the time dollar amount of that employee. So the first one would be like employee, the time value of your employees or business owners. The next thing would be NBAA, the National Business Aviation Association, has some amazing studies, and it's shocking how much more productive employees are on the airplane. And what do I mean by that? Well, if I've got 3 people in the back of the plane, and I'm taking them to, let's say, a meeting with, let's say, if it's a real estate company, maybe it's a zoning commission in Des Moines. If you're a construction company, might be meeting with your client down there. Whatever it is, whatever reason you're going down there for, if you have these 3 people that are in the aircraft, on the way to Des Moines, they can actually be talking about, how do they want to do the pitch, or what are the key points to make. They can be running through the presentation. And so study after study has shown that people are much more productive when they're sitting there. And if you think about it, not only are they able to be more productive, but there's certainly a lot more privacy. Even if you're first class on Delta or American United, even if you're in a first-class environment, you're probably not having 3 people across the aisle trying to talk about their presentation. Yes, you can work a little bit on your laptop, but it's never the same as when you can actually be in an aircraft. So the time value of the people on your airplane, and then the time en route used towards the business. Now, the next category would be increased revenue generation. A lot of times I'll ask people, like, okay, if you could go anywhere you want at any time and you could travel and save this much time, and obviously you could calculate how much time you could actually save with business aviation.
902 Bravo Alpha, chasing my frequency 133.65.
902 Bravo Alpha, made the switch, 13365.
902 Bravo Alpha, ready.
So, I tell people, if you could actually imagine like the ultimate, machine that takes you anywhere you need to go at any time, and you're that much more productive, could you add 1% to your bottom line in terms of your top line in terms of revenue? And they're like, yeah, I could probably add a lot more than 1%. If you're in construction and you've got like multiple projects going around in the region, if you had an aircraft, could you could you use that aircraft to generate, one or two more build sites or clients or projects or whatever it is that your company does? Could you increase revenue or get a little bit more, projects, whatever it is, if you could go anytime, anywhere, meet with clients, potential clients, bid on a project, whatever? And every business owner I've ever talked to is like, absolutely. So, make sure that you're including that in terms of that mental calculation of the business aircraft. Maybe that gives you an increase of, 10% revenue. Likely it's more like 20 to 40% revenue gains easily if you can, anytime you need to go somewhere, anytime you want to meet with a potential prospect, if you can use a business aircraft, it's dramatic as to how much increased revenue you could get. There's the depreciation availability. Obviously, you need to talk to your tax person about that, but here's a prime example. I was flying with a client in a Cirrus. That's a single engine piston airplane. Depending on the generation of Cirrus that you get, you can find those for $200,000 to $300,000 for the older generations. The SR22s on up to, brand new, they're about $1 million, and anywhere in between. So I was flying with a good friend and client, and he made a comment. He said, I added up all the costs of this aircraft, and he's in construction, and he said, I added up all the costs of this aircraft, and he goes, it cost me $60,000 a year. And he goes, that's what I pay one of my project managers. And he goes, this airplane can do so much. And he's got sites everywhere. And he's telling me all this. And he says it's going to cost me $60,000 a year. So I kind of did the math for him. And I said, well, have you done the depreciation gain for your cash flow? And he goes, no, I got an accountant for that. And I said, oh, well, okay. And I kind of ran some numbers. I said, well, depending on the schedule you use, this is the cash that you're going to save year over year for depreciation. He looks at it, and it was basically an almost net zero cash expense for him to own and operate that aircraft. Now, he was an owner pilot, meaning he flew it himself. He didn't have to pay for a pilot. But nevertheless, he was shocked at the value of depreciation. He was used to real estate depreciation, those 25-year scales, and not used to, aircraft depreciation, which, depending on bonus depreciation availability, it could be a 7-year maker schedule, it could be a 2-year schedule, whatever it is, depending on, again, the year and bonus depreciation available. But nevertheless, when you include depreciation in your cash flow analysis, it's pretty substantial how much it can help you. And then the last big area that I'm going to mention is improved and dramatic improvement of your quality of life. Most people, the one thing they always say they can't get back is time. And whether that's time to use towards your business or what most people are always craving is that time back at home. They say, I'm always on the road. I can't get a flight home at night, so I got to stay an extra night. The aircraft has a dramatic ability to improve your quality of life. You schedule and fly the flights that work for you. If you want to get home at the end of a day, let's say you live in, Grand Forks, North Dakota, and you want to go Bismarck, meet with a potential client, go to Fargo, meet with the current build site, go to Bemidji, Minnesota, and, meet with a current client, and then back to Grand Forks. You could do all that in a single day versus, driving or the airlines, that's impossible. So the airline can not only improve your business, but it dramatically can improve your quality of life. One last question that I kind of get a lot is, how do you use this in your personal life? There are ways to use the aircraft in your personal life, even if it's under, your business asset. You'll talk to your accountant about that. There are multiple ways to have it used as a personal asset, and a lot of it depends, are you an owner-flown pilot, the amount that you're using it, and are passengers coming with you, the size of the aircraft. There's a lot of different factors there, but you can absolutely use the aircraft for personal travel. And if you had you wanted to use it for maybe an executive perk for one of your employees, you can also arrange that. It would just be considered taxable income, and again, you'd have to talk to your accountant about that. So again, a dramatic improvement of your quality of life, both the schedule and possible uses for the personal life. The last thing that I want to mention then is, if you're getting into a business aircraft, it's super important that I got a whole bunch of kids here for us. But the last thing is that you're getting the right aircraft for your mission. So, for example, I know people that, for their business, they've got an aircraft in the upper Midwest, like a single-engine airplane that was not ice protected, meaning you couldn't fly the airplane into icing conditions. Well, up by us, it's icing conditions, potentially 6 months out of the year. And so then what's happening is they're having to cancel a lot of flights. And they did that because they thought, well, we just want to test the water. So we're going to find, a cheap airplane, get into it, inexpensive, and just try the airplane. Well, the problem was then the airplane couldn't do its mission. It couldn't get them where they need to go when they need to go. They couldn't use it to get to the meetings that they needed to be at. So they ended up driving or taking the airlines again. So I would always say, obviously there's a budget, but Again, be careful that you get the right aircraft, so when you actually run the numbers, it's the right airplane for your business. If you ever have any questions, always feel free to reach out for me. Otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your day.